Title: The Fisherman and the Magic Fish. Once upon a time, in a small village by the sea, there lived a kind and humble fisherman named Ezekiel. Every day, Ezekiel would cast his net into the ocean, hoping to catch enough fish to feed himself and his wife, Martha. They lived in a tiny, simple cottage, but they were content with what they had, or at least, Ezekiel was. One bright morning, as Ezekiel pulled in his net, he felt something heavy. Struggling with all his might, he finally hauled in the biggest fish he had ever seen. But this was no ordinary fish, its scales shimmered like gold, and its eyes sparkled with wisdom. Just as Ezekiel was about to place the fish in his basket, the fish spoke. "Kind fisherman," it said, "please spare my life. I am no ordinary fish, but a magical one. If you let me go, I will grant you any wish you desire." Ezekiel was stunned. A talking fish? A magical one at that? But he was a kind-hearted man, so he gently released the fish back into the sea. "I have no wish for myself," he said, "but I'll tell my wife about your offer." The fish flicked its tail and disappeared into the deep blue ocean, leaving a golden shimmer on the water. When Ezekiel got home and told Martha about the magical fish, her eyes lit up with excitement. "Ezekiel," she exclaimed, "why didn't you ask for something? We live in such a small, run-down cottage. Go back and ask the fish to give us a bigger, nicer house." Wanting to make his wife happy, Ezekiel went back to the sea. He called out to the fish, and sure enough, the fish appeared again. "My wife wishes for a larger, finer house," Ezekiel said. The fish nodded, and with a flick of its tail, the sea glowed gold for a moment. "Go home, kind fisherman," the fish said. "Your wish is granted." When Ezekiel returned home, he was amazed to find that their tiny cottage had transformed into a beautiful house, with stone walls and a sturdy roof. Martha was overjoyed, and for a while, they lived happily in their new home. But soon, Martha grew restless. "Ezekiel," she said, "this house is lovely, but what use is a grand house without wealth? Go back to the fish and ask it to make us rich, so we can live in luxury." Reluctantly, Ezekiel went back to the sea and called for the fish. The waves were a bit rougher this time as the fish appeared. Ezekiel told it of Martha's new wish. The fish sighed, but granted the wish. "Go home, and you shall find what you seek," it said before disappearing. When Ezekiel returned, their home was filled with chests of gold, jewels, and fine clothes. Martha was thrilled and began to spend lavishly. But as time passed, her desires only grew. One day, Martha said, "Ezekiel, wealth is not enough. I want to be a queen. Go back to the fish and ask it to make me a queen." Ezekiel, now feeling uneasy, tried to reason with her. "Martha, we have everything we could possibly need. Why ask for more?" But Martha would not be dissuaded. So, with a heavy heart, Ezekiel went to the sea once more. The sky was overcast, and the waves were rough as he called out to the fish. The fish appeared, looking tired and sad. Ezekiel told it of Martha's latest wish. The fish granted it, but warned, "Be careful what you wish for." When Ezekiel returned home, he found that their house had become a grand palace. Martha was now a queen, dressed in royal robes, and sitting on a golden throne. But despite all her grandeur, she was not happy. Not long after, Martha's ambition reached its peak. "Ezekiel," she said, "being a queen is not enough. I want to control the sun, the moon, and the stars. Go back to the fish and tell it my wish." Ezekiel was horrified. "Martha, you're asking for too much. We must not tempt fate." But Martha was relentless. Fearing what might happen, Ezekiel returned to the sea one last time. The sky was dark, and a storm was brewing. When the fish appeared, its golden scales were dull, and its eyes were full of sorrow. Ezekiel, with a heavy heart, relayed his wife's final wish. The fish looked at him and said, "You have asked for too much. Return home and see what has become of your greed." With that, the fish vanished into the stormy waters. When Ezekiel returned home, he found that their grand palace was gone. In its place was their old, small cottage. The gold, the jewels, the riches, all had vanished. Martha sat on a simple wooden chair, dressed in her old clothes, her dreams of power and wealth shattered. Martha wept, realizing the folly of her greed. She begged Ezekiel for forgiveness, and he, being the kind man he was, forgave her. They lived out the rest of their days in their simple cottage, grateful for what they had, and never again did they wish for more than they needed. And so, Ezekiel and Martha learned that true happiness comes not from wealth or power, but from being content with the simple joys of life. And the magic fish? It was never seen